Hello, Gemma here from GemMacrame. Today we are going to be doing 3 projects which are perfect for beginners to macrame, and we're going to be learning 3 of the most common knots used in macrame projects. So the first macrame project we're going to complete is a macrame bracelet. So for this project I'm using 2 different colours, and I'm using a 3mm cotton macrame cord. You can use 1 colour or 2 colours, it's totally up to you, whatever you prefer. And I'm going to cut myself 2 lengths of 2 meters. So 2 pieces of cord that are 2 meters long. Once I have my 2 meter long pieces of cord, I'm then going to fold them in half. So as I'm showing you here, I'm just finding the 2 ends and then running the string through my hand so I can find the halfway point. I'm going to do that with both pieces of cord. And then once I've got them actually laid out on my board, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull the outside strings so that they are slightly longer than my inside strings, because we're not going to be using the inside strings. So I'm going to make sure that the outside strings are longer than the middle ones. And I'm just popping a bit of masking tape at about a finger width's length across the top, just to stop my strings from moving whilst I am working with them. So the knot we're going to complete is called a square knot, and we've got 4 pieces of cord here that we're going to use. We're lettering them A, B, C and D. Only A and D are the strings that we're going to use. B and C are actually your filler strings, and they don't move at all during the knotting process. So we're going to first of all start with string A, and what we're going to do is we're going to fold that over so it crosses over all the other strings like so. You need to leave this little gap here because you're going to need that later. We're then going to go to string D, and we're going to pick that up and pull it from underneath A and put it straight back down on top again, just like so. We're then going to feed string D underneath B and C, like I'm showing you here, and pull it through a little bit. And then we're going to pull it through the gap we left earlier between A and B. We're going to pull it through there, and then you're going to slowly pull the strings out towards the sides, all the way up to the top of the bottom, I should say, of the masking tape, like so. Pull it as tight as you can without pulling the strings out of the masking tape. And now we're going to repeat that, but going back the other way. So we start with string D and we cross that over the 2 middle strings as shown. Again, leave your gap there so that you know where you're going to go back in a minute. Pick up string A and put it over the top of string D. Feed the string underneath the 2 middle strings, and then pull it out through the gap left between C and D. So when you're looking at your strings, always let them A to D, left to right, so that you're not getting confused with where string D is and where string A is. Pull that tight, and that is your first square knot completed. So we're going to repeat that, and we're going to keep going all the way down. So it's called a signet of square knots. And obviously you can rewind this video and you can watch it as many times as you need to while you're practicing your knot, just to make sure that you're getting it right. What I will do in a moment is I will speed it up a little bit so that you're not sat here watching me doing lots of square knots. But you're basically going to keep going until you feel comfortable that the bracelet is going to fit around your wrist. One tip to mention here is you do need to keep your 2 middle strings, the 2 filler strings, they do need to stay fairly taut while you're pulling your strings tight. So what you can do is you can place a little bit of masking tape at the bottom so that it holds your strings tight for you. Otherwise, you might be able to see here that I use my thumb to kind of hold it down and keep it in place while I'm tightening my knots. Another tip here for you, if you are getting comfortable with the knotting process, is you might be able to see that I've kind of merged 2 steps into one. So the point where you put the strings underneath the 2 middle strings, I've kind of added that together to go up and straight out through the gap on the side. So that's just something you can do if you're getting comfortable. Also, if you're getting lost with which side you're on, if you can see the straight down lines, whichever side the last straight line down is, that's the side you're then working on, because sometimes it can be a little bit complicated to remember what side you're on when you're knotting. Right, so once you've done enough square knots that you feel like the bracelet is going to sit comfortably around your wrist, obviously you can take it off at any point just to measure it around, just to see how you're doing, see if you need to add any more square knots or not. But then you can take it off your board and let's make it into a bracelet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 2 long middle strings and I'm going to put them through the loops that I've left at the top. So obviously it's easy to show here, but obviously the blue one's going through the blue loop and then the mustard one is going through the mustard loop. Basically it's left to left, right to right, and I'm going to pull them through and then I'm just going to double check it on my wrist again to see how tight I'm going to want the bracelet to be. So ideally you want it to be tight enough so that it sits comfortably on your wrist, but loose enough so that you're going to be able to take it off your wrist comfortably. So I'm just taking it off again. So the next part is slightly fiddly, but bear with me here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fold the 2 long filler strings over so that they're coming back on themselves, like so. And then I'm going to put the 2 shorter strings that I've been knotting with, I'm going to put them upwards. So as you can see, it is a little fiddly, but just keep going with it until you're comfortable. So we've folded the 2 filler strings down, and then we've got the 2 outside strings folded up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the 2 longer filler strings to make some square knots that go over all of your strings. So they're going to go back on themselves, and they're also going to include the 2 outside strings as well. One thing that might make your life a little easier at this point is probably to use a bit of masking tape just to stick your bracelet down to the board so that it's not wobbling all over the place, because as you can see I was trying to get it started there and realised it wasn't going to work, so I needed some masking tape to hold it in place. So I've got my 2 outside strings are up and over, my filler strings are folded back on themselves, and now I'm going to do the square knot again, going over all of the strings. I'm going to pull that nice and tight, but not too tight so that it pulls it too short for my wrist. And then we're finishing off the square knot. There we go. And then I'm going to do another square knot underneath that. And at this point I can pull it a lot tighter because I know I'm not going to affect the shape of the bracelet. And then I'm going to end it with 1 little half knot because that's what the space is that I had left underneath that. So I'm just finishing off with just 1/2 of a square knot here, and I'm pulling that tight. There we go. So now my bracelet is secure. So the first thing I'm going to do is, now that my 2 outside strings are secure in the square knots, I can now just trim them off. They're not going to go anywhere, so that will be absolutely fine. So I'm just going to flip that round so that I can see where the spare strings are coming from and just snip them off, just like so. Perfect. And then we've just got to take care of our 2 longer strings now. So for this I'm going to use my beader tool. So this is a really fantastic tool when it comes to macrame. It's a plastic handle with a metal ring or metal loop I should say coming out the end. You could also use a crochet hook as well, that would do the same job. So I'm going to put the metal loop through one of the parts of my square knot, just like so, and then I'm going to put a little bit of the string that I want to get rid of through the loop, but don't pull it all the way through, just pull a little bit through, and then I'm going to pull it through the square knot. So this is just going to secure the string, make it look nice and neat. There we go, pulling it through, and then I'm just going to trim that off. So it makes it lovely and neat and almost seamless, almost. And then I'm going to go through the same bit again, and this time I'm going to put the other string through. Again, making sure I don't pull too much of the string through, and working that through, pulling it tight and trimming it off. There we go, bracelet is done. So I'm just taking the masking tape off and I'm just checking it, giving it a little pull just to make sure it is all nice and tight and all my strings are in nicely, and I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to try it on, make sure it definitely does fit. That would be a disaster, wouldn't it, if it didn't fit? But there we go, it's all done and it looks nice and neat, and I'm really happy with this. So I hope you love your macrame bracelet. time for project number 2, and this time we are making a macrame keyring. So for this project you are going to need some 3mm cord again. Can be single twist, can be braided, can be free ply, whatever you prefer is fine. You're also going to need a little spare keyring fob, which are easily found in craft shops or Amazon, anything like that. And you're going to need to cut 2 pieces of cord which are 150 meters long. So, 150 centimeters long, I should say. Oh my goodness, please don't cut 150 meters of cord. So I'm just cutting 2 pieces there which are 150 centimeters. And this knot that we're going to do for this keyring is actually very similar to the one that we have just done on the bracelet, but this one is called the half square knot. So you're already going to be an expert at this knot, I promise you. So for this keyring, we first of all need to attach our strings to the little fob of the keyring. So to do this, I'm folding it in half, and then I am finding the middle, making a little loop out of the middle, and I'm putting it through the keyring fob. And then I'm opening up the little loop and pulling the ends through and pulling it tight. That is called a lark's head knot, and that is the most common way to attach string to a project. Notice as well, I've again got the middle string a lot shorter than my outside string. The middle string is probably about 75 centimeters long, something like that, maybe a little shorter. So the 2 middle strings are short and the 2 outside strings are long. There we go, so I'm just pulled the 2 ends there through the loop and I'm pulling it tight. There we go. So again, we are going to be working with 4 strings, and again we are labelling them A to D. So you've got your A string on the left, 2 middle strings B and C, and the outer string is D. So your 2 outer strings are your working strings and your 2 middle strings are your filler strings, and they will not be moving. So again, the same as the bracelet, we are starting with string A and we are crossing it across all 3 strings. So it's gone there. Then we're picking up string D and we're picking that up from underneath A and putting it straight back down on top again. Then we are feeding string D underneath B and C, and then it is coming out through the gap left between A and B. So you'll notice it is exactly the same as what you've already been doing, but there's a slight difference. We're not going to go back the other way. We are actually just going to continue to go from side A. So I will show you what I mean in a moment. I'm just tightening that knot up all the way to the top of the keyring fob. There we go, nice and tight. So on the last project you would have gone to string D to start. We're going to start again on string A. So again, we're doing exactly the same thing again. Crossing over, bringing string D over the top of A, popping it underneath the 2 middle strings, and then bringing it out through the gap left between A and B. And we're just going to keep doing that knot over and over again, and you're going to find that it's naturally going to start twisting, which is really exciting. I really love this knot because it is so simple, but it just looks so pretty and so effective. It's a really, really lovely knot to do. It's really nice in plant hangers and in wall hangings, but it's also really nice as a decorative keyring. So I'm just speeding it up here for you so that you're not having to watch hours of knotting. But you can see here already, it's already naturally starting to twist. You may get to a point where you feel like the strings are hard to work with because they've twisted so much. And I'm just going to show you that so you can see that they're sort of at a funny angle. All you need to do is flip it round, flip the whole keyring part round, and then you can carry on working as normal. Just always remember that string A is always the one on the left hand side. Another tip that I'm showing you here is just to remind you that you can stick the 2 middle strings down if you feel like they're getting in the way and affecting the knotting, because it is important to keep those 2 middle strings taut if you can. I do tend to keep my thumb there, but obviously if masking tape works better for you, then do that. That's absolutely fine. And you're going to basically keep going. So this again is called a signet of half square knots. So as you can see, I'm just turning over the keyring as and when I feel I need to, just to keep the pattern going. And you're basically just going to keep knotting as long as you want to, as long as you want your keyring to be. So there we go. I feel like I've probably almost come to the end here. So So you have got the option here of adding a new knot that's going to just make it look nice and tidy at the end. You don't have to do this part, it's absolutely fine if you don't, but this is called a gathering knot. So I've got a piece of string here which is roughly about 50 centimetres, and I'm laying it next to my keyring with a little part of it just above the end of my keyring. I'm just going to fold the long string up so that it makes a little loop. Sorry, I realise this is slightly off camera. I believe I do move this up in a moment. There we go. So you can kind of see I've made a little loop here with the string. So what I'm going to do to start the knot is I'm just going to lay all the strings in my fingers and I'm going to grip them tight, and then I'm going to use the end of the string to wrap around all of your strings. So for this knot you do need that little bit of string that's poking up at the top. You do need that, so make sure you don't wrap that within the knot. But you're going to wrap over all of the strings that are at the end of your keyring and the loop that you've made as well. You're going to wrap around them all, and you're going to go wrapping round and in a downwards motion as well. So you're going to wrap round and down, and keep it nice and close together, and try and pull it as tight as you can as well, as you can see. So I'm going to go round roughly about 6 or 7 times. As you can see, I'm not sure how many times I've gone round so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've gone round 6 times, and now with the end of my string I'm going to actually put that through the little loop that I created just a second ago. So I'm just putting that in through the loop. It doesn't matter which way round you go in, you can either go from behind or from the top, it's fine. And then I'm just going to move that over to the side and just hold it tight for the moment. And then we're going to pull the little top bit of string so that it pulls the loop in and through the gathering knot. So you can see it's disappearing into the knot, and it's going to pull the end of your string into it as well. And you want to pull it so that you feel the knot is about halfway up the gathering knot. You don't want to pull it all the way through because that will undo the knot. You want to feel it halfway through, and you simply trim the ends, trim the top, trim the bottom, and then you can use half of your scissors, the little scissor blade, just to tuck any loose ends that there might be, tuck it into the knot as well, and that will hold that really tight and make it nice and neat for you. This knot is really handy for things like plant hangers, so you'll tend to see a gathering knot at the top and at the bottom of your plant hanger. Just giving my strings a little trim here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a comb or a pet brush, whatever you've got handy, and I'm going to brush out the ends of my string so they go nice and fluffy. Now I will note here, if you've used a braided string you won't be able to do this step because you can't brush it out, but what you could do is you could put some nice little decorative knots on the end if you wanted to, or you can just leave them hanging, absolutely fine how you want it to be styled. Also, if you're using a 3-ply rope, you will need to untwist that first before you brush it because it will make your life a lot easier. So I'm just giving that a good brush through, and then I'm going to trim it a little bit shorter just so it's how I want it to be. Give it another little brush just to make sure that all of the strings are the same length, and we are done. That is your half square knot, or the twisty knot, keyring completed. And I really love this project. It's such a lovely thing to do as gifts for people. Hope you enjoyed it. Can you believe it? We're on our final project, and this one is going to make a lovely, cute little hanging decoration. So I've got a wooden ring here which is roughly about 7 centimetres long, as you can see, but you can use any size wooden ring, that's fine. You can get a selection of sizes off craft shops, Amazon, things like that. You can even use a curtain ring if you wanted. And then I've also got 8 pieces of cord here which are 50 centimetres long. They are all 3 millimetres in thickness, but I have got some slightly different cords here. I've got a single twist, and the one I'm now showing you is a 3-ply rope. I wanted to show you a rope one just to show you what it's like when you brush them. So I've also got an extra piece of string here, which again is 50 centimetres as well. We're just going to leave that to the side. We're going to need that at the end, okay? So we're going to put on the strings, we're going to pop them onto our wooden ring. So to do that, we're folding them in half, finding the ends, making sure the ends are level, using the middle loop part here, and that is going to go through the bottom of our wooden ring. Fold it round the other side and then open the loop up so you can pull the 2 ends through, just like we did on the keyring. So then you pull that tight. That is a lark's head knot, and that is now attached to our wooden ring. Now, as I said, I've got 8 pieces of cord here, and they're all varying in different shades. I've also mixed some cotton cords with some bamboo cords, so that's what the one is I'm using now. That's bamboo, so that's extra shiny and soft, just for different textures on my little hanging decoration here. But you can use as many as you want. This is really up to you. You can use as many pieces of string as you want. You can use any colour of string that you want, and obviously it depends on the size of the wooden ring that you've got as well. So on this 7cm ring, I can fit at least 8 pieces on, if not probably a few more if you wanted it to be fuller. But this is, you know, it's totally up to your design needs, whatever you want it to look like. This is just a basic design that you can then copy and adapt as to however you want to, really. So I'm just going through all of these, adding them all on using my lark's head knot one by one. And then obviously if you get to the point where you've added all these strings on and you feel like you do need some more, you can always cut more and add more. If you feel like you've got too many, again, you can take them off. It's absolutely fine, totally up to you. So once all the strings are attached, I'm just now going through, giving them all an extra little pull just to make sure the knots are nice and tight. I'm also making sure that all the strings are the right way round, so the strings haven't got twisted, they're all sitting nice and flat. And you can actually leave it at this point if you wanted to. You could just brush out the strings now and then make it a hanging decoration just like that. That's absolutely fine, nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to add an extra step here because I want to make sure that my strings stay attached, because a lark's head knot can come slightly loose. So this next step just helps you to make sure that the strings stay nicely attached to the wooden ring. So if you remember, I said about having an extra spare piece of string that's 50cm long. I'm just bringing that in now and I'm laying it across the top of my strings. It can be any colour, it doesn't matter, because we're going to be hiding it with our knots anyway, so don't worry about that. And we're going to start with the very first string on the left, as I'm doing here. I'm folding it so that it goes over the top of our new filler string. It goes round the back, and then you must bring it out through the gap that you've left by going over. So you're going over the string and kind of leaving like a D-shaped gap for you to then come back through, if that makes sense. So we're going to fold it over to the right. We're then going to tuck it behind our filler string, and again you see that D shape there that we've left, and we're going to pull it through the D shape, and you're going to pull it as tight as you can so that it goes up nice and tight right underneath your lark's head knot. And then we're going to move to the next string along. So we go over the top of the filler string, leaving a D shape just there. We tuck it round the back of our filler string and we pull it through and then pull tight. And then again, we go over the top of our filler string, leaving a D shape, put it round the back and pull it through the D shape and pull it tight and slide it up. This knot is called a double half hitch knot. We do it twice on each string and it just gives it a nice decorative feel, gets all the strings nice and tight so that they're not going to come off our decoration. And it just looks really pretty. You can, if you want to, put a bit of masking tape onto your string, especially on the left hand side, because then it will help it stay nice and sort of tight for you. And you can stick the string down on the other side as well so that you don't have to move the string. But it is important to keep that filler string taut because you don't want to get it caught up into the knot, because it will change the knot and how it will look. It will make it look messier, if that makes sense. So we're just going to keep doing this with every single bit of string. We're going to go round and through twice on each string, and you're going to go all the way to the end. There we go, that's my last double half hitch knot done. So that is all completed. Doesn't it look pretty? So the next job we need to do is to hide these two bits of filler string that we've got poking out. Now you could always, if you wanted to, is just add them into your decoration. So if you'd use the same colour that you've used on your ring anyway, you could just brush them and add them in. But I'm going to show you a way to hide the ends of your strings. So I'm bringing out my trusty Easy Beader tool again. I love this for tidying up my macrame projects, it's so good. And what I'm going to do is I've turned my project over and I'm going to go in through the second knot in. So you can see there's a little like diagonal line there. I'm actually going to put the beader tool through there. Make sure you go through the whole knot, not just part, because obviously if you're using a single twist string, it's easy to go through the strings rather than through the knot. I'm then putting the end of the filler string through the end of my beader tool, and then I'm going to slowly and gently work that through the knot. So it sometimes takes a little bit of persuasion, a little bit of massaging just to pull it through. There we go. I'm going to pull that through and pull it tight, and then I can simply just trim the end of my string off, and that will just keep the ends all nice and neat and you won't see it from the front. So now to do the other side, I actually had to flick this upside down because I couldn't quite get the right angle in when I was trying to do the other side. So again, I'm going to the second knot in and I'm going to the little diagonal part and putting my beader tool through, putting the end of the string through the little metal loop. Don't put it all the way through because it just makes your life harder. And then I'm going to gently persuade that to go through the knot. A little bit of massage, a little bit of tugging, and it will go through nice and easy. There we go. Pulling it tight, and then we're going to trim the end off. There we go, and then we flip it around and look at the front. You can see that it is now nicely hidden and you would never know it was there. So the next part is really fun and it's going to be the brushing, but I'm just pointing here to where I've got a 3-ply rope. I believe I said earlier, but you do need to unravel this first before you brush it. And a little tip to do it quickly is to give it a little twist at the very top of your string, and then you can separate the pieces out and just pull them apart rather than having to untwist it from the bottom, which can take a little bit longer. So I've just given it a little twist at the top, separated out the 3 different sections of strings, and then I'm literally just pulling them apart, just like so, just before you brush them, because otherwise it makes it harder to brush and it takes longer for you to brush them as well. Single twist is fine, you don't need to do anything to that, you can just get on straight with that and start brushing. Getting my trusty pet brush out, and I'm going to just start brushing. Now I will warn you, it can get quite fluffy when you're brushing out your strings, but especially when you've got a lot of fluffy strings. It does let off quite a lot of dust, so do be prepared to get covered in a lot of dust. And if you're doing a lot of this, do remember to take a lot of breaks outside as well, just so that you're not breathing in all of that fluffy air, because it's not very good for your lungs. So you're just going to keep going and going. It does sometimes take a little while to brush these strings because don't forget they have all been twisted for a long time, so they want to return to their twisted state. So you're just going to keep brushing them. I also turn the whole project over, brush it from the back as well. If you want to get that really straight effect, you can also spray them with a little bit of water and then perhaps put like a cloth over them and iron them flat. You can use a stiffening spray as well, which can work to keep the strings stay nice and flat as well. And I've just turned the project onto the side now because I'm going to start trimming the strings, and I just find it easier to trim along the side. So obviously you can keep it this long if you want. If you like a nice long fringe, that's absolutely fine. I tend to make mine a little bit shorter, so I'm just grabbing a sharp pair of scissors here and I'm giving it a little trim, a little bit longer than I actually want it to be, because it's quite tricky to trim at this angle while I'm filming. So I'm just giving it a little trim, and then I will pick it up and make sure that I'm happy with it, give it another brush and then trim again. Always better to trim longer than you want to start with, because obviously you can't put it back on once you've trimmed it. So do start longer than you mean to, and then give it a little bit more of a trim as you go along. So I'm just brushing it out again, and I can already see here that I did not cut that the way I wanted it at all. It's a lot longer on one side than it is the other. So I'm just going back in now and trimming it again. You could also make a little template if you wanted to be really exact. So you could cut a shape out of like a bit of a cardboard box or something and then use that as a template. Also, I find sometimes picking it up helps me to get like a nice shape to it as well. But that usually works when it's a bit shorter, because then the strings aren't so floppy. But basically, keep going until you're happy with the shape of it. There we go. So I'm giving it a little brush every time I give it a trim, just to make sure that they're all the same level, and I'm happy with that now. So all we need is a little bit of string to hang it from. And I found a little bit of braided string in my stash that I'm going to use. So I am doing a lark's head knot here to attach the string to the top of my ring. This is a 5mm braided string, so it'll be nice and strong. And I think it's roughly about 50 centimeters. You could add a little bead here if you wanted to. That would look really nice, nice bead at the top. But this one, I'm just going to do a knot. So I'm just wrapping the 2 strings around my fingers, putting the strings or the ends of the strings through the middle and pulling it nice and tight so it's a nice tight knot. Then just going to trim off the ends of the strings and it is done. I really hope you've enjoyed this and the other 2 projects that we've done today. Do tag me in any social media posts if you do make any of them, and I hope to see you back here very soon. Thank you, bye.